Hello everybody, it's Mrs. Welch, and today we are going to be reading a couple chapters of George's Marvelous Medicine. Chapter 8 is called The Brown Hen. George stood in the farmyard looking up at the roof. The old farmhouse had a fine roof of pale red tiles and tall chimneys. There was no sign of Grandma. There was only a song thrush sitting on one of the chimney pots singing a song. The old Wurzels got stuck in the attic, George thought. Thank goodness for that. Suddenly, a tile came clattering from the roof and fell into the yard. The song thrush took off fast and flew away. Then another tile came down, then a dozen more. And then, very slowly, like some weird monster rising up from the deep, Grandma's head came through the roof. There she is. Then her scrawny neck and the top of her shoulders. "How am I doing, boy?" she shouted. "How's that for a bash up?" "Don't you think you'd better stop now, Grandma?" George called out. "I have stopped," she answered. "I feel terrific." "Didn't I tell you I had magic powers? Didn't I warn you I had wizardry in the tips of my fingers? But you wouldn't listen to me, would you? You wouldn't listen to your old Grandma." "You didn't do it, Grandma," George shouted back to her. "I did it. I made you a new medicine." "A new medicine? You? What rubbish," she yelled. I did, George shouted. "You're lying as usual," Grandma yelled. "You're always lying." "I'm not lying, Grandma. I swear I'm not." The wrinkled old face high up on the roof stared down suspiciously at George. "Are you telling me you actually made a new medicine all by yourself?" she shouted. "Yes, Grandma, all by myself." "I don't believe you," she answered, "but I'm very comfortable up here. Fetch me a cup of tea." A brown hen was pecking about in the yard, close to where George was standing. The hen gave him an idea. Quickly, he uncorked the medicine bottle and poured some of the brown stuff into the spoon. "Watch this, Grandma," he shouted. He crouched down, holding out the spoon to the hen. "Chicken," he said. "Chick, chick, 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 chicken. Come here. Have some of this." Chickens are silly birds and very greedy. They think everything is food. This one thought the spoon was full of corn. It hopped right over. It put its head on one side and looked at the spoon. "Come on, chicken. Good chicken. Chick, 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 chick." The brown hen stretched out its neck towards the spoon and went peck, and it got a beakful of medicine. The effect was electric. "Owie!" shrieked the hen, and it shot straight up into the air like a rocket. It went as high as the house. So there's George calling the hen, and there it is flying in the air as high as the house. Then down it came into the yard, splosh, and there it sat with its feathers all sticking straight out from its body. There was a look of amazement on its face. George stood watching. Grandma up on the roof was watching too. The hen got to its feet. It was rather shaky. It was making funny gurgling noises. Its beak was open and shut, open and shut. It seemed like a pretty sick hen. "Oh, you've done it, you silly boy," Grandma shouted. "That hen is going to die. Your father will be after you now. He'll give you socks and serve you right." All of a sudden, black smoke started to pour out of the hen's beak. "It's on fire," yelled Grandma. "The hen's on fire." George ran to the water trough to get a bucket of water. "That hen will be roasted and ready for eating any moment," Grandma shouted. George sloshed the bucket of water over the hen. There was a sizzling sound and the smoke went away. "Old hen's laid its last egg," Grandma shouted. "Hens don't do anything after they've been on fire." Now that the fire was out, the hen seemed better. It stood up properly. It flapped its wings, and it crouched down low to the ground as though getting ready to jump. It did jump. It jumped so high in the air and turned a complete somersault, then landed back on its feet. "It's a circus hen," Grandma shouted from the rooftop. "It's a flipping acrobat." Now the hen began to grow. George had been waiting for this to happen. "It's growing," he yelled. "It's growing, Grandma. Look!" It's getting bigger. Bigger and bigger. Taller and taller it grew. Soon the hen was 4 or 5 times its normal size. "Grandma, can you see it?" "I can see it, boy," the old girl shouted. "I'm watching it." George was hopping about from one foot to the other with excitement, pointing at the enormous hen and shouting, "It's had the magic medicine, Grandma. It's growing just like you did." But there was a difference between the way the hen was growing and the way Grandma grew. When Grandma grew taller and taller, so there's the hen growing and growing. When Grandma got taller and taller, she got thinner and thinner. This hen didn't. It stayed nice and plump all along. Soon it was taller than George, but it didn't stop there. It went right on growing until it was as big as a horse. Then it stopped. "Doesn't it look marvelous, Grandma?" George shouted. "It's not as tall as me," Grandma sang out. "Compared with me, that hen is small. I am the tallest of them all." Chapter 9. The pig, the bullocks, the sheep, the pony, and the nanny goat. At that moment, George's mother came back from shopping in the village. She drove her car into the yard and got out. She was carrying a bottle of milk in one hand and a bag of groceries in the other. The first thing she saw was that gigantic brown hen towering over little George. She dropped her bottle of milk. Then Grandma started shouting at her from the rooftop. And when she looked up and saw Grandma's head sticking out from the tiles, she dropped her bag of groceries. "How about that, eh, Mary?" Grandma shouted. "I'll bet you've never seen a hen as big as that." "That's George's giant hen, that is." But, stammered George's mother. "It's George's magic medicine," Grandma shouted. "We've both of us had it, the hen and I." "But how in the world did you get up on the roof?" cried the mother. "I didn't," cackled the old woman. "My feet are still standing on the floor in the living room." This was too much for George's mother. She just goggled and gaped. She looked as though she was going to faint. A second later, George's father appeared. His name was Mr. Killycranky. Mr. Cranky was a small man with bandy legs and a big head. He was a kind father to George, but he was not an easy person to live with because even the smallest things got him all worked up and excited. So there's George's parents looking up in disbelief. The hen standing in the yard was certainly not a small thing, and when Mr. Cranky saw it, he started jumping about as though something was burning his feet. "Great heavens!" he cried, waving his arms. "What is this? What has happened? Where did it come from?" "It's a giant hen." "Who did it?" "I did," George said. "Look at me," Grandma shouted from the rooftop. "Never mind about the hen. What about me?" Mr. Cranky looked up and saw Grandma. "Oh, Grandma, be quiet," he said. It didn't seem to surprise him the old girl was sticking up through the roof. It was the hen that excited him. He'd never seen anything like it. But then, who'd had? "It's fantastic," Mr. Cranky shouted, dancing round and round. "It's colossal. It's gigantic. It's tremendous. It's a miracle. How did you do it, George?" George started telling his father all about the magic medicine. While he was doing this, the big brown hen sat down in the middle of the yard and went cluck, 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 cluck. Everyone stared at it. When it stood up again, there was a brown egg lying there. The egg was the size of a football. "That egg would make scrambled eggs for 20 people," Mrs. Cranky said. "George," Mr. Cranky shouted, "how much of that medicine have you got?" "Lots," said George. "There's a big saucepan full in the kitchen, and this bottle here is nearly full." "Come with me," Mr. Cranky yelled, grabbing George by the arm. "Bring that medicine. For years I've been trying to breed bigger and bigger animals. Bigger bulls for beef, bigger pigs for pork, bigger sheep for mutton." They went to the pigsty first. George gave a spoonful to the pig. He blew smoke from his nose and jumped all over the place. Then it grew and grew, and in the end looked like this. So there's the hen's big egg, large egg, and there's the pig getting the marvelous medicine. They went to the herd of fine black bullocks that Mr. Cranky was trying to fatten up for the market. George gave each of them some medicine, and this is what happened. Then the sheep. So you'll see here, there's Mr. Cranky and George, and look how big the cows got. Same with the sheep. Then the sheep. Very large indeed. Oh, we're stuck. He gave some to the gray pony, Jack Frost, and finally, just for fun, he gave some to Elma, the nanny goat. Oh, wow. Look at how big she gets. There's George. And that's the end of that chapter. The next chapter is called A Crane for Grandma. Stay tuned.